And before we continue on to learn more about athletics in the high school, I'd like to just show you a short recap video. Our last conversation for Facebook Live was focused on educating boys. We've been trying to focus all of these different conversations on Facebook Live and our information nights on what's distinctive about BC High. And so this was these are some highlights from our last conversation.
We understand on a very intimate level that learning just doesn't happen in a space that's void of care and nurturing. And that can't happen without knowing the students very well.
We want to try to create confidence in the boys. Even if you're wrong, that's okay. You know, the effort is what we want to try to reward and really look for. And I think that extends to the field, to the court too. You know, a wrong answer is like a missed shot. It's okay. So many boys come into school as a 14, 15-year-old kid, freshman, trying to find their way. And I think that BC High, we do a really nice job of welcoming them and then trying to build them up. I think it's underrated how sensitive boys can be. To see that sensitivity as a positive and to try to, again, build up that confidence. And, you know, again, maybe when they're juniors and seniors, they can do that for some of our underclassmen themselves.
I think that's often a pressure that boys feel, is they feel like they have to choose a particular identity.
So many times the boys talk about that they discovered their love of cross country, or they discovered their love of community service, or they discovered the fact that, you know, a new relationship with their faith, you know, and just, I think that you can build empathy in a lot of ways by educating boys about maybe experiences that are other to them, that are different for them, whether it's the text that we read or discussion that we have, basically offering a window into something else for the boys. I love if you can write a 5-paragraph essay, that's fantastic. But if I can try to help you to be more thoughtful, if I can try to help you to be more empathetic, not tell you what to think, really, right? But how to think. I think that's how I approach things. And I think I've seen that from teachers and coaches at BC High.
All right. Well, that was a little snippet about educating boys, our conversation from 2 weeks ago. So if you'd like to hear and see that whole conversation, you can go to our video section on our Facebook account for BC High, and you can watch our whole half hour on Arupe, educating boys, and in our high school on educating boys. But our topic tonight is athletics, and it is great to be here with you. My name is Father Nolan. I work in the enrollment office here at BC High, and we want to invite you to ask us any questions that you might have about athletics or anything else. You can put them in the comments section. And I'd like to introduce our guests for this evening. It is great to have our athletic director, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. John Bartlett, who's for the class of '87. And John, it's great to have you back. Maybe you could introduce yourself.
Great to be here, Father Nolan. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. As Pat mentioned, class of 1987. I've been at BC High for 29 years and have loved every minute of it. It's an amazing school. I am who I am today because of it. I owe so much to, you know, obviously family is a major reason we are who we are, but I think character building and from our teachers, our coaches that we've had, I owe so much to BC High. So I know it's a great school. I know what it does, what it produces, and I see it every year with our graduates. So it's great to be here tonight. Look forward to answering any questions that you have.
That's great. And we're also joined by one of our seniors. It is great to have Paul Terry with us. Paul is on our hockey team. He's played hockey and played varsity baseball. But Paul, maybe you could share a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what sports you've played here at BC High.
Yeah, Paul Terry from Arlington, Massachusetts. I actually enrolled in BC High in 7th grade, so this is my 6th year at the school. And I think Mr. Bartlett hit the nail on the head. I've become such a better person during my time at BC High. I've loved every second of it. Like Father Nolan said, I play hockey and baseball, and I also partake in a lot of admissions events, whether it be helping out at an open house or helping out with tours.
I think, Paul, I think you might have been one of the first students I met here at BC High when the first mass I ever said here was the Blessing of the Helmets mass your sophomore year. So that was that's been great to be connected with your team and with all the teams here as chaplain for athletics. I think the question that's on people's minds is, should I go out for a sport? Am I going to make the team? Is there an opportunity for me here at BC High? And maybe Mr. Bartley, you could take a shot at that.
Yeah.
In terms of the different opportunities we have here, particularly starting with freshman year.
100%. So my advice to each and every one of you is go for it. Don't say, I wonder if I'm going to make the team. I don't know. What we prepare you for at BC High is to tackle any opportunity or any potential roadblock that you might have, and go after it. If you have a passion, then pursue that passion. I think a lot of families out there feel like, oh, I'm not sure if my son will be able to make the team. More often than not, they do make the team, but there's not going to be a way that you know unless you try for it. And what it teaches you is what we want you to do in college and beyond is, if there's something that you want to go for, then go for it. And the fact that we've all been cut before, that we've all faced rejection before, but it's part of the life process of dealing with adversity and moving on and challenging yourself to come back and try something else. Or most often than not at BC High, kids will make the team and they wind up coming back and say, I'm really glad that I went out for that team. So go for the team, go out for the team. Get involved. We have so many sports. We have 20 varsity programs with all that have JV and freshman programs as well. So we have so many after school activities that we offer. If there's a sport that you haven't tried before, some of our sports that kids don't play a sport until they get to the high school. So they may try something like as far as like track or other sports that we offer that youth programs they don't have in the local town. So at BC High, they try the sport and they end up becoming a varsity letterman by senior year. So definitely get involved is my advice.
It's interesting, some of the unique sports we have that students may pick up while they're in high school, whether that's rowing or ultimate frisbee, developmental rugby, to learn and really appreciate the game. And Paul, you had an interesting freshman year. Tell us a little bit about, the two sports you played during your freshman year. At what levels? What was that like?
Yeah, so like I said, I play hockey and baseball. So those seasons are back to back with each other. I tried out for hockey, with the expectation and the hope that I would make a team. I was fortunate enough to actually make the varsity team as a freshman. So, at first it's definitely a little nerve-wracking because you're not surrounded by kids in your grade. I mean, granted, there were a few freshmen on the team as well, but there are a lot of upperclassmen on the team. So adapting to that environment was a little bit tough, but I give so much credit to the seniors. And I looked up to them as freshmen. They did such a good job of welcoming us to the team, made it a welcoming environment. As a freshman, I didn't get a ton of playing time. I got into one game, which was in my hometown. Funny enough, I got in for a shift, but that's part of being a underclassman on a varsity team. You got to pay your dues. You're out there in practice every single day. You're just as much part of the team as anyone else. It's certainly there were days where you'd be on the penalty kill, blocking shots in practice, not wanting to do it, but you have to. But that's all a part of being a teammate, being a brother, and the camaraderie brought by the seniors and the upperclassmen on the team was unparalleled, and that made that experience unbelievable. And as a senior this year, hoping for a hockey season, I take some of the skills that they presented to me as upperclassmen, and I'm going to carry them out and hopefully do the same with underclassmen on the team.
Yeah, it seems, to think of a freshman on such a good hockey team like BC High, and uh, that must have been so. That was a championship team, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then the next year as well. And you mentioned there was a moment on the bus as a freshman. What was that like?
Yeah. So in the bus, we usually take a nice coach bus to the games. There's enough rows in the bus and enough seats where everyone kind of gets their own row. And as you would expect, everyone's kind of getting into the game setting, getting into the zone, listening to music, staying quiet, maybe visualizing what plays they're going to make on the ice. So naturally, the bus environment's a little bit quiet. Sometimes there's music playing in the back, there's chatter going, but for the most part, everyone's locked in. So I was sitting up. This one instance, we were going to a game at Zavarian. I was sitting in my row, in my in my seat up towards the front of the bus, and an upperclassman by the name of Andrew McDonough, senior on the team, great leader, tremendous friend, like a brother, came up, sat next to me, and we just had a normal conversation. We're talking about school. We didn't even talk that much about hockey. It was just a normal conversation about life, and it was kind of nice. It was early on in the season. I didn't really, I'm we all knew each other at that point, but not in depth. And it was nice to have a senior come and talk to an underclassman like myself and make me feel comfortable and a part of the team. And that's something I take. That's an example I take and look to maybe implement in my leadership skills going forward this year.
Oh, that's great. Mr. Bartlett, when you think of different examples of athletes, I mean, Paul, it seemed like, going on with freshman baseball and then being a freshman on the hockey team, that seemed out to kind of work out right away. But can you think of, any example of a student who's like hit a little bit of an obstacle, but then as kind of things have turned out pretty well for him?
Yeah, we have cases where a student athlete will give the example of maybe getting cut from a sport, and then they go out for a different sport in the same season. So our coaches do a really nice job of encouraging student athletes, if they get cut in a sport, to try a different sport. So we have cases all the time of student athletes who try a different sport, end up loving it. We actually, a funny story, years ago, we had a wrestler who was an all-state wrestler, and when he received an award at the end of the season, his acceptance speech, he wanted to thank the freshman hockey coaches for cutting him, which gave him the opportunity to try wrestling. Because going back to my last reference, is there's some sports that a lot of towns don't offer, such as wrestling. So there's sports at BC High where people can pick up for the first time. But I think, just even Paul as an example, he's a great example of who our student athletes are. He's a state champion, 2 sports. And you see the humility, you see the caring side of him. You see he's a scholar athlete, the list goes on. And I don't mean to embarrass him, but those are who the student athletes that we're producing. It's and he even referenced, Andrew, when he was a senior captain, reaching out to the freshmen, seeing if they were okay, talking to them on the bus. That's the community we have. That's our athletic department. We stress all the time about care for others and thinking outside the self and getting involved. So it's great to see that type of work being done by the coaches, who also make sure the student athletes meet those standards. But hey, Paul, just giving a great shout out to you, bud. Good job.
I appreciate it, Mr. Bartlett.
I tried to get the zoom in on Paul's face just to make it.
That was good. Right on cue.
But Paul, when you think about anything like whether it's that moment on the bus, the senior kind of going out of his way, it really takes initiative. It really takes someone taking the first step and thinking about that ideal of being open to growth. One of our ideals for our graduates at graduation. Tell us a little bit about freshman baseball. What was that like in terms of kind of being open to growth, meeting new friends?
Yeah, so I came from Arupe, so I knew approximately 120 to 150 kids that were entering the high school from Arupe. But on top of that, there's 150 new kids that come into the freshman class. So, um, like I said, I was fortunate enough to make the varsity team, but I didn't have the opportunity to meet some of the freshmen that were on the freshman team because of that. So, freshman baseball provided me that opportunity. I got to meet a lot of new kids that I wouldn't have met if I had made varsity. Um, so in that aspect, it was incredible, and it was a really fun season. We played around 12 to 15 games, very competitive, I must add. And we actually took a trip mid-season to New York City to play against our Jesuit rivals, Fordham Prep. So we were actually the first freshman team to stay overnight in New York City. This was a tradition started by Mr. Argento, I believe, the freshman baseball coach, and they've been doing it for years, where they go down to New York City for the day. However, we went down the day before, stayed overnight in a hotel. During the day, we went to the Museum of Natural History, walked around the city, Times Square, grabbed a bite to eat at a couple pizza places, and then kind of the most memorable moment was that night. The entire team, we were all in one room, really just playing cards, talking, kind of introducing ourselves to one another. Us Arupe kids, we knew one another, but introducing ourselves to some of the newcomers, some of the kids who came from other schools, telling them what life is like at BC High, and just taking part in normal conversation. And then the next day, we went over to Fordham Prep, which is right on Fordham University's campus. We got a tour. We ate lunch there, and then we headed over to the Bronx to a random field. I think right field was like 120 feet. It might have been the weirdest field dimensions I had ever seen, but it was a competitive game. We ended up losing 3-2, but that was definitely the most memorable moment of the season.
That's pretty neat. Did
Yeah.
that screw up your swing?
A little bit, because I was swinging for the fences, but I think the wall in right field was like 38 feet, so similar to the Green Monster, but a lot closer. So it definitely screwed up my swing a little bit.
You have to be careful with the Bronx, or anyone from New York for that matter. But let's change the subject here. You've talked a little bit about how competitive our program is. That Paul won back-to-back Super 8 championships in the Garden, and Mr. Bartlett, maybe you could just share a little bit about. We talked about the variety of opportunities, but what about kind of how competitive our programs are?
Yeah, so BC High belongs to the Catholic Conference, which I believe is one of the top athletic conferences in the state. So it's very competitive. We're Division One. Most of our non-league opponents are Division One. So the great thing about BC High is we are in a high-profile position for athletics, which is great. And I think a lot of families look to BC High for that reason, besides the academics and social aspects and religious aspects. So we play a great league schedule, non-league schedule, great competition. A lot of college coaches come by BC High recruiting, which is great. That being said, the number of programs that we offer, there's a sport for everyone. So it's great competition. High profile, in the news all the time. So it's a great opportunity to showcase talent.
And you think about competitiveness. That's what grabs the headlines. What we see on kind of the Twitter feeds or Instagram or whatever. But I think it's those behind the scenes moments that really define what a BC High athlete is. That's been my experience so far. And my first experience with BC High athletics, again, when I first met Paul and his teammates with this blessing of the helmets mass, right after that, to start the hockey season, we went and kind of had a little luncheon down the hall in the faculty dining room. And I was really impressed how Coach Flaherty asked all of the members of the team to get up and to introduce the people they came with. What was that like for you, Paul, to kind of introduce your family?
Yeah, so definitely unexpected at first. When I was a freshman, obviously everyone who was on the team the year prior knew what was coming after that. But so essentially, after the blessing of the helmets, we went into I think it was the Murphy Alumni Room, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of have a lunch, a get together, sort of the first moment in the season where the parents can meet one another. The upperclassmen parents meet some of the freshman parents or new kids on the team. So us players, we have to one by one. We stand up. We have to introduce ourselves and our parents and any other family member that's at the event. So as you might expect, it's a little nerve wracking at first. It's public speaking might not be everyone's forte. Definitely, as a freshman, it was a little bit nerve wracking for me, standing up in front of a lot of people I didn't know. But it's a fun environment. Everyone gets a kick out of it. A bunch of faces light up, and their people's cheeks become a little bit rosy when they stand up, and nervousness, but it's such a welcoming environment. Everyone's open. It's a fun experience. And year 2 and 3 was a little bit easier for me to get up there and introduce myself and my family members.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And you were saying, that telling a story about the senior who came by and chatted with you on the bus, but also how you've been able to give back already, and what has that been like through hockey?
Yeah, so I mean, the game of hockey has been extremely generous to me. All the coaches that I've had, all the teammates, and I consider all my teammates brothers that I've had, and especially all the sacrifices that my parents have made for me. So I feel like it's my responsibility to give back to the game. So, with that being said, every year, starting in 8th grade, actually, from 8th grade to junior year, really, because this year with COVID, there's some restrictions, but essentially every Saturday morning at 6 a.m. when I was available, I would go down to my local rink at Burns Arena in Arlington, Massachusetts at 6 a.m. and help out at Learn to Play and Skate. And, it hits home for me because that's where I began my hockey career at the age of 4. And I always will remember looking up to those high school volunteers, mimicking their every move on the ice. And, I want to be that same person for the younger kids looking up to me. So, yeah.
Well, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. Mr. Bartley, we have some questions here, and so we have a question here from Christy D'Ambrosio. If students play sports in Arupe, do you think they are at an advantage and in a better position to make high school teams as opposed to coming in from other schools as a freshman? Great question. I'll throw it to Mr. Bartlett. And just if you have any other questions, please put them in our comments section, or feel free to email us at enrollment@bchigh.edu. And what do you think, Mr. Bartlett?
Great question. I think there's no advantage. Coaches do a real nice job at tryouts and look at everything as far as talent, work ethic, coachability, whether they're coming in as a freshman or whether they're coming up from the outside or coming up from Arupe. Every student athlete is given the same opportunity, looked at the same way. So I don't think there's an advantage from being an Arupe student as opposed to coming in from the outside.
Good stuff. So, Paul, I feel bad we're taking you away from some serious homework tonight, but you did say that one of the things that you picked up, I'm sure Mr. Bartlett has slips, or maybe I have a slip that I can say, get out of jail free card, or Mr. Bartlett shaking his head. Of course not.
Yeah.
The wrong person. But Paul, one thing you talked about is picking up time management as an athlete at BCI. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I can unequivocally say that the greatest skill that I've picked up in the past couple of years at BCI is time management. So I'm fortunate. I'm very lucky now to have the ability to drive into school, But from 7th grade to sophomore year, really, I had to take the red line in from Alewife, which is in Cambridge. And so, as you can probably imagine, the T isn't always up to par in terms of convenience. You could get on the train at 7 o'clock. You could expect to get on the train at 7 o'clock in the morning. A normal train ride was anywhere from like 35 to 40 minutes. It could take an hour because of delays. But, during that hour or so, I would get started on my homework, take advantage early on in the day, use any of my free time up just so I can get that homework done. And I've been doing that since 7th grade, and it becomes time management becomes paramount during the athletics season. I mean, for instance, a couple of years ago, I remember one night we had a hockey game in Framingham at 8 o'clock on a Monday. So that game ended around 10:30. Probably didn't get home until 11:30, and you could easily not do your homework. Sacrifice a good grade. Take a 0. That's the easy solution. But if you get on it early in the day, you could kind of avoid that. Get to sleep early. Granted, there are some days where you're gonna have practices that go late, and you kind of have to sacrifice some sleep in order to get homework done. But if you want to excel as a student athlete, that's part of it, making sacrifices. But if you manage your time well, you should be in pretty good shape.
Father Pat, can I add to that real quick?
Sure.
I think you see so many BC High alums so successful in Boston, New England, across the country, and I think that is what Paul touched upon, is the one thing that the discipline, the regiment, day in, day out, kids, long commutes, school day, go to practice, long commute home, dinner, 3 hours of homework, next morning, repeat. And that stays with you. And I think that work ethic that BC High alums have, that's what families will receive. Their son will graduate, have that discipline in college, and then in the real world with their family. So it's evident that the character building and that hard work and discipline stays with the BC High alum.
Yeah, it made me kind of think of the way you were describing it, Paul, kind of packing your lunch, getting on the train, going to work, finding those different pockets of the day to get homework done because you have a game that night. And
Yep.
It reminded me of a particular image that stuck with me from my time here. And it's when you guys won the championship. That was on St. Patrick's Day a couple of years ago. And then you had baseball starting the next day, and you had to come in to be able to play baseball. You couldn't just take the day off, right? What was that like for you?
So I had that experience 2 years in a row. Freshman year, I was hoping to make the freshman baseball team. So, that sleep that after the Super 8, obviously the game didn't end until relatively late, and we were out a little bit late as well. So I didn't get home until I don't know, probably around 12, and I still had some homework left. And then the next day, you have the stress of baseball tryouts on your back. So that first year was definitely it's an extremely quick turnaround, but the one that I was very happy with because it worked out in the end. We ended up winning the Super 8, and I fortunately made the baseball team as well. But year 2, that was even crazier because our game went to 4 overtimes, didn't end until 11. A very late night. Still had to do some homework when I got home. Probably got 2 hours of sleep, and then I was up and at 'em at 7:30, ready to go to school, in anticipation for baseball tryouts. So it's a quick turnaround, but if you want to play 2 sports at BC High that in which the seasons are back to back, that's kind of what you have to expect. But it all works out in the end, and I love it. So
That's great. Yeah, and it makes me think of how you guys are good at time management. You're good. You're smart about finding sleep when you can get it, and getting your sleep. And Mr. Bartlett, maybe you could just touch on our Release the Talons program, about how important that's been over the last year or so, and all the different ways that we're paying attention to athletes and caring for athletes.
Yeah, I mean, mental health, as people know, is that's something that's in the past few years has really taken the forefront. And so we started last year a mental health awareness, and we called it Release the Talons, just to let the student athletes know it's okay to, take time for yourself and to talk to someone if there's an issue going on. Right now, I think 40%, close to 40% of college athletes feel some sort of mental health, and I think there's a negative stigma to that, which there shouldn't be. So our announcement and our, just relaying the message to our student athletes that it shouldn't be a negative. That mental health could be lack of sleep, could be not eating well, could be cut from a team, could be an injury. So it's day-to-day things that most people experience anyway. And I think that's the one thing that we really have to hit home is take time for yourself, whether it's working out, stretching, eating properly, yoga, talking to a guidance counselor, having a go-to person if you need to. We all have tough days. We all have things to overcome. So I think it's just raising awareness to the student athletes. Men in general, and especially student athletes, have this, oh, I'm fine, if their shirt's on fire. So I think it's really important for young males to understand that it's okay to have tough days, and that we all experience it, and that you're not alone when you're experiencing it. I also, Father Pat, I see John Pasinski on the chat. I just want to, John's an alum, name from the past. Hope you're doing well, John. Great to see your name. Good man.
That's great. And it just makes me think of, Mr. Bartlett, you talked about having a go-to person, and how many people there are like that in the school. It's not just our coaches, but, the way our upperclassmen treat some of the younger guys on the team, as Paul mentioned. That idea, as with our freshman teams, of trying to get them to mix in and be open to having a new roommate on that New York trip, or the different retreats we do to get our guys kind of getting to know each other as a little bit more than just teammates or the guys in our class. So it's been a real pleasure for me to be involved in the athletic program, and I see how much the mission shines on our program, and how much our athletic program contributes to the mission of our school. And I think what better example than Paul. Thanks so much for joining us this evening and kind of sharing a little bit about yourself. And Mr. Bartlett, it's always great to speak with you. The second time you're on, well, third if you think about those two segments. So you're getting closer to the 5-Timers Club jacket.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, thanks.
Only two more. That's good. Two more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you can retire. Paul, thanks so much for being with us. It was great to get to know you a little bit better, and for you to be able to share your story. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thanks, Father Nolan.
All right. We'll see you. Hope you thaw out, Mr. Bartlett and Paul. Take care. And I'm sure you've had a little bit more homework tonight. So we'll see you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. This has been our focus on athletics here with our virtual conversations. It was great to have a conversation with Mr. Bartlett, our athletics director, and with Paul Terry, who is a member of our varsity hockey and varsity baseball teams. It was great earlier to speak with Deacon and Ishan, who played Rupe sports, and with Mr. Tom Connolly, who is our assistant athletic director and a member of the class of 2008. So we hope you can join us after Thanksgiving. We'll start these back up on Wednesday nights, leading up through December, leading as we get closer to Christmas, and then our 9th grade deadline the first week of January for applications, and then our 7th and 8th grade deadline the last week of January for applications. But if you have any questions, please contact us at enrollment@bci.edu, and we hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. Take care.